Informative, provocative, gun talkative, the gun guru, Michael Loy, exclusively on the Heads Up Radio Network.
Hello and welcome to the Michael Loy Show on Heads Up Radio Network. I'm sitting here with Chris Taylor again. At this point, Chris is my co-host, and we're talking guns again tonight. We have an interesting call, and if we have time to get to it tonight, we have a very interesting call in regards to people under the age of 21 being in possession of handguns and whether or not that's legal here in the state of Idaho and in many other places in the country. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. First, I'd like to welcome Chris to the show. Welcome to the Heads Up Radio Network, Chris.
Thank you again.
You're welcome. I'm glad to have you here. Okay, over the course of the week, Chris has been helping me out with finding some videos to use in my CCW classes, and he's also building my website. So I sent him a link to a few videos that I thought were noteworthy, and what I wanted to know is there any value in showing these videos in my CCW courses, or in this particular application we're looking for videos that help illustrate certain key values or important things while carrying a firearm, and this is for a 2-day defensive handgun course. The very first video that we're looking at, and this is a question that I get many, many times. Chris has seen this video as well. It's of a store clerk or someone inside of a store, and when the video first starts, there's a gentleman who ends up being the victim in this particular case, is sitting near what appears to be a jewelry case, and seems like he's having a good time. Nothing's out of the ordinary, and two robbers bust into this business and immediately open fire, not only on this particular individual but other people in the room as well. One good thing is that the victim in this crime, the gentleman that's sitting down when the door gets kicked open, does have a firearm with him. But he obviously wasn't very comfortable or confident in using that firearm. Chris, do you have anything to add to this point in the video?
Yeah, I think that as much as training, weapon selection, everything else, as you know, I always focus on the psychological aspect of a battle or confrontation and how well I will perform in that situation. Will I have the confidence? Will I keep cool enough to make the right decisions? And in this case, it's questionable that this video scares me because this person probably thought he was prepared, but when the time came, it didn't work out well. Exactly.
A question that I get oftentimes in my course, and I'm not exactly sure how to say this without insulting everybody in the world. It's the older generation that bring this up all the time. 45 years and older, 50 years and older. They don't have the understanding of firearms like younger people today do. And they always ask me, do you carry your gun with a loaded cartridge in the chamber? And, of course, my immediate response is, yes, absolutely. The gun that's not loaded doesn't do me any good at all. And then they come back and they say, well, we've always heard that if you have a revolver, you should carry one chamber in the cylinder empty in case you were to drop it and the hammer were to contact a hard surface before any other portion of the firearm. It could potentially force the primer force the firing pin into the primer. It's not true. With modern revolvers today, there's always a safety gate of some type that prevents that from happening. Modern semi-automatic handguns absolutely will not fire. So I think what I find is that overwhelmingly, the people that are asking me that question are not truly concerned about their firearm discharging or negligently firing if they drop it or something else. I believe that they don't have the understanding and the confidence to carry a firearm with a loaded cartridge in the chamber. And I think that they're not willing to admit that to me or to themselves. And in this video, this is a guy who clearly felt the same way. He has a firearm on his person at the point that he's attacked. He has a loaded magazine in the firearm, at least from what I can tell in the video, and he does not have a cartridge in the chamber. He was one of those fools that thought, if somebody comes busting in, as I draw my firearm, I'll rack the slide hard and fast and my gun will be back in action. Ultimately, that doesn't work out well for him in the video. Chris?
Yeah, in the video, he never gets a shot off. He's fighting with his firearm. He is apparently racking the slide multiple times, either trying to chamber the weapon or maybe it's failing to fire due to a safety on. And those are things that scare me. That's why I've made the choice in firearms I have. For me, a firearm that has a latching safety is a deal breaker because I know I'm going to do it wrong. No matter how much I practice, in that panic situation, trying to fumble, go as fast as I can, it's going to be in the wrong position. And also, I don't want to cycle around into my firing chamber either. My weapon's ready to fire. I'm already worried I can't get the rest right after that, so I'm not going to add those additional things. I guess I trust myself more to make the right decisions and be careful in handling my weapon before the incident. But if an incident occurs, I'm going to have my weapon ready to fire.
Absolutely. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to Michael Loy with Chris Taylor on the Heads Up Radio Network.
It's the sound of my gun. Oh, honey, what have you done? Oh, it's the sound.
Coffee date today. My kids are sick again, and I have a terrible headache, and medicine just doesn't seem to help.
Seems like you guys are always sick. Have you had your house tested for mold?
Come on, Jen, you know me. I keep my house spotless. There's no mold here.
That's what I thought about our house. We had the same problems last year and called mountain mold testing. They came right out and inspected our whole house for mold.
Really? What happened?
Well, mountain mold testing took air samples, and the lab test showed that we were breathing dangerous, invisible mold. We got the mold cleaned up, and now we don't have any more wheezing, headaches, or congestion. They gave us our health back.
Mold can cause numerous health problems, including allergies, chronic headaches, asthma, and lung infections. Children, pregnant women, and the elderly are especially susceptible. Call Mountain Mold Testing at 208-660-8877. That's 208-660-8877. Online at mountainmoldtesting.com.
Experiencing an avalanche? The damage from water, fire, or mold can be a disaster and costly. Let Avalanche Cleaning and Restoration repair your disaster fast, safe, and reliably. Call 208-762-2227 for pricing, or if you have an avalanche emergency, call the hotline 24 hours, 818-4411. Avalanche Cleaning and Restoration. Fast, safe, and reliable. 818-4411. Now that you're online, you can get on board the Michael Loy Program on the Heads Up Radio Network. Here's Mike.
Hello and welcome back to the Heads Up Radio Network with Michael Loy. Here again with Chris Taylor. And before we went on the break, we were discussing a video that I want to use in one of my 2-day defensive handgun courses. And, of course, it's the idea of a person that's carrying a firearm without a loaded cartridge in the chamber, and he makes 5 attempts to try to rack the slide while he's being shot, kicked, pushed, and of course the firearm never does successfully get a cartridge into the chamber, and he's never able to fire a shot. Unfortunately, this man's stupidity cost him his life in this video. He ends up bleeding to death and slumps over in the video, and he's dead, clearly. So the guy that decided to carry a gun, he was about 25% right in my opinion, maybe only 10% right. He needed the other 75 or 85% of it, which is training, to get out there and know how the darn thing works before you start carrying it thinking that it's going to save your life.
Absolutely. Yeah, part of the most important part is making your weapon ready to fire. He made the choice to make his weapon ready to fire after the fight started. I've made the choice that my weapon will be made ready to fight before I leave my house.
Absolutely. Long and short of it, make sure if you're carrying a gun for personal protection that it's 100% loaded and ready to go. If you're not confident or comfortable carrying in that manner, it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong by not being comfortable. It just means that you haven't trained enough. I'm not comfortable flying a Lear jet right now, but if I receive the right amount of training or the proper training, I'm sure that I'd feel more than comfortable with doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just not the way to do it anymore. Basically, you're already at a huge disadvantage because you are a law-abiding citizen. The criminals are going to draw their gun first, possibly start firing first. You already have that disadvantage. You have to, once you recognize the threat, they could already be firing at you. Then you can draw your weapon, present it, and fire. To have to add that extra time to make the weapon ready and possibly fail making it ready could be a very deadly choice.
You're absolutely right. And we're always one step behind the bad guy. We have to respond to somebody threatening our lives. They're threatening our lives. They're the initial person that ensues the violence. So we have to respond to that, putting us moments behind right out of the gate.
Absolutely. Having a weapon, a quality weapon, a weapon that performs well, has a good reputation, is ready to fire, training, every advantage you can have over your adversary is going to increase your odds for you to win in that outcome.
The second video that we have here is a gentleman that breaks into a school board. I guess I say break into. He walks into a school board meeting, and he's disgruntled, and I don't know exactly why. There is an explanation on Frontsight Training's website. It's in one of their blogs, and that's where I initially found the video. I didn't pay a ton of attention to it the first time I saw it, but is that what it was? Okay, so his wife didn't get a job, and he walks into a gun-free zone, a school board meeting, and he draws a firearm. And now at this point, he's holding between 5 and 10 people hostage at gunpoint. But of course, they're all really safe in their gun-free zone. Not a single one of them have a firearm. And he rants and raves and tells them that he's going to kill them, that he wants to die, and nobody's able to defend themselves in this video. I could not imagine a worse type of situation or a worse situation than this. You're completely at the mercy of another person. They are going to decide whether you're allowed to live or whether you're going to die. For me, I love being an American. I love being a man. I love doing what I do every day because I'm the guy that gets to make those choices. Nobody else gets to decide that for me, including whether or not I live or die, or someone around me or someone I care about lives and dies. And these people, the same people that most of the time are for having schools be gun-free zones, are now held at the mercy of their own laws.
I think in this case, a few more signs probably would have made the difference. I'm sure the guy just didn't see the no guns allowed signs. Yeah. If he had, he would have turned right around and not proceeded in to shoot people inside this meeting.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. They should put up bigger signs. Like, what were they thinking? Shame on these people for not putting up larger signs. They would have never fallen victim to this violent crime.
And also, I noticed, too, that not one of the people that were there mentioned to him, did you realize this is a gun-free zone? You need to leave now. You have a firearm. That is not allowed here.
Absolutely. In this video, to conclude it, he holds him at gunpoint for a little while. And I was under the impression the first time that I watched the video that he actually shoots one of the school board members, but Chris gathered a little bit more information on the video.
Yeah, apparently he fired his weapon several times, and apparently hasn't been to any of your training courses because he hit absolutely no one, even though he was a short distance away. No one was shooting back at him, and it was, it was pretty interesting.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay, the bullet struck the desk. Wow. So we have a guy that looks like he's definitely less than 15 feet away from his target, which is a member of a school board, and he misses from 15 feet away, and he's under no duress. So I guess the good thing is that we don't ever we very rarely, if ever, see criminals out on the gun range training with us. So we do have that advantage that most of the time they're holding their guns in the full homie or the half homie grip, and they're not even sure which way to look down the sight. So.
And it's pretty typical. Men kind of get that attitude, like, well, I will just pull out my gun and shoot people, and I'm going to hit them, and I would accept him as my adversary anytime. It seemed like he was pretty, incompetent.
Yeah, we said it 2 weeks ago, and I'll say it again. If I'm going to have to get in a gunfight to protect my life, I hope it's against somebody like this.
Absolutely. Less training for them, more training for me.
Yep, I could not agree more. So it brought up another interesting topic, a little bit off subject here with the videos. We were in an instructor meeting Monday night, and we were discussing what you can win in a gunfight. Chris, are you familiar with this?
Absolutely.
Okay, so what can you win in a gunfight?
You can win, for one thing, you can win your life, but...
Yeah, well, and they brought up an interesting point when we were talking about, we were considering a couple of different things to put on advertisements, and of course the conversation led into the direction of what can you win in a gunfight. So everybody sat there and discussed it for a minute, and finally one of the guys said, actually, you can't win anything in a gunfight. The only thing you can do is hope to leave the gunfight with what you brought into it, i.e. your life, your gun, your personal items, whatever it may be. But you could never take anything in addition to that out of a gunfight. So I thought, that's pretty interesting logic.
That's interesting. I guess I was confusing them with the topic, can you win if you lose?
Yeah. And that is a different story altogether.
Yes.
Okay, so we have 3 more videos that we want to discuss, and we're going to talk about those as soon as we get back from the break. One guy that doesn't know when to pull the trigger, a second guy that's too afraid to pull the trigger, and a third that doesn't have any idea what he's doing. You're listening to Michael Loy with Chris Taylor on the Heads Up Radio Network.
Experiencing an avalanche? The damage from water, fire, or mold can be a disaster and costly. Let Avalanche Cleaning and Restoration repair your disaster fast, safe, and reliably. Call 208-762-2227 for pricing, or if you have an avalanche emergency, call the hotline 24 hours, 818-4411. Avalanche Cleaning and Restoration. Fast, safe, and reliable. 818-4411. Looking for something different to do tonight? Thinking of a restaurant that you haven't been to for a while, or a place to take the kids out for a fun night? Ever find yourself in this situation? This is a question that prompted publisher Jeanette Dunn to create Idaho Cuisine and Spokane Sizzle dining and entertainment guides. And it just keeps getting better with their pocket guides, online editions, and now online local restaurant finder at sizzlingcuisine.com. Also find local wineries, breweries, distilleries, great recipes from local chefs, hot spots and cool happenings, and chances to vote for your favorites. Be in the know about local happenings when you sign up for the Sizzlin' Cuisine e-News, delivered to your desktop weekly, and be eligible to win a free dinner for 2. You've always enjoyed reading the magazines. Now it's easy to flip through them online too. Makes it easy to find restaurants that offer great menus prepared by experienced staffs who really care to serve you the best in local cuisine. Spokane Sizzle and Idaho Cuisine are online at sizzleincuisine.com. We do the footwork to make it easy for you to find just what you're looking for. Support of Heads Up Radio's audio stream comes from people like you. Join the thousands that make independent radio stations like Heads Up Radio available to the public and your community. Please donate today. Now that you're online, you can get on board the Michael Loy Program on the Heads Up Radio Network. Here's Mike.
Okay, well, before we left on the break, we were talking about a few videos that I want to use in my upcoming training courses. We have 3 of them that all tie together in one way or another here, and probably in multiple ways. The very first one is a homeowner who realizes, and I don't know the whole situation here, only what the video plays. I haven't read anything about the video, but it really doesn't need any explanation. It doesn't matter to me why these 2 gentlemen ended up in this situation. We have what appears to be a homeowner, comes out of a garage, and there's no garage door. There's a tarp hanging there, and it appears as though 2 people are making an attempt to choose him to be the victim of a violent crime, whether it be home invasion or they're planning on murdering him. It doesn't matter to me. The homeowner clearly catches wind of the fact that there's 2 people making an attempt to break into his house. He grabs his firearm and he makes it out toward the driveway where he peels back a tarp, and of course he has his firearm up. He points it directly at his adversary, and his adversary also has a gun pointed at him. And they stand here and they tinker around with each other for a few seconds, more than a few seconds, which I'm sure feels an awful lot like a lifetime. I'm watching the video right now. We're at 4 or 5 seconds and they're still pointing guns at one another. If you're going to use a gun for personal protection, pull the frickin' trigger. Why are you standing there holding that thing, holding a gun on somebody else, and not have made the decision to pull the trigger long before you ever picked up the gun? It's not used for the purpose of intimidation. It's not a tool designed to threaten people. It's a tool designed to take another human being's life to preserve your own life or another human being's life. That's it.
Absolutely. And this is a situation I would prefer to be in where my firearm is at the ready. It's a fair fight at this point. We both have our firearms out. I don't have that disadvantage. And absolutely, the person has made the choice to come to my place of residence and bring a firearm. when I see him, my assumption is his intent is to do harm to me, and I'm not going to wait to find out if I'm right or wrong at that case.
And the law would side with you on that. The law is very clear. If someone makes an attempt or someone actually does here in the state of Idaho enter your home, if they make substantial entry over a threshold, then by all means use lethal force to protect your family, your personal property, third persons inside your home, yourself. And in this scenario, granted, the attacker or the thief or whatever he may be isn't actually inside the home or the permanent dwelling of the other individual in the video, but it doesn't make a difference. And this is where we see the cases like Trayvon Martin, where people get so hung up on the stand your ground laws. We see the other cases where people focus on the wrong part of the case. The Castle Doctrine would never play a part in this case when it went to court. The only thing that matters is that the reason the Castle Doctrine wouldn't apply is because the criminal here, if this were in the state of Idaho, didn't cross the threshold of the home and make substantial entry in. So let's rule out Castle Doctrine, although that does give me warm, fuzzy feelings inside to think that I'm protected by the Castle Doctrine. You still have someone else pointing a gun at your body, at your person. It's time to use lethal force. Don't hesitate. Take that person's life, because you're not going to allow them to decide whether you live or die. You will decide if you live and die. And if you choose that death is worth standing your ground for and taking another human being's life, then be comfortable with the idea that dying is okay in that particular scenario.
Absolutely. In that case, when I went to investigate, or in fact that person did, he grabbed his firearm and I would grab my firearm for my personal defense. And when I went and viewed the situation and saw that he had a firearm and it was pointed near me, I would view that as a threat and view it as a time to defend my life. Absolutely.
You're darn right. So, all right. So a good video leads us into our other two videos where we're talking about why are you carrying a gun if you haven't already made the decision to use lethal force, being comfortable with taking somebody else's life. And it's not pretty. It's not nice. It's not easy for anybody to do. But for the love of God, keep your guns at home if you're not ready to use them. So the second video, Chris and I we've both seen this video at this point. This takes place in another country. It looks something like South America to me, or who knows where, but it's definitely not in the United States. We have a gentleman standing on the edge of a roadway as the video starts, and he's holding what appears to be a large kitchen knife, would you say? They say
very large.
Yeah, 10-inch blade, something like that. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Tooler rule, the Tooler rule was a study done, and ultimately the conclusion of the study was that if you have your firearm in a holster, strong side hip, and you have a single retention device or less, if a person's within 21 feet of you, they can run towards you, charge you, and touch you before you can get your gun out of the holster and fire a shot in most scenarios. So in this particular video, if someone's made their intentions clear, they have the opportunity, they have the weapon in hand, i.e. this large knife, which what appears to be a kitchen knife, lethal force would be justified if that person got within 21 feet of you, potentially even greater distances. Chris?
Absolutely. In that situation, I would absolutely have my weapon presented and ready to fire. And at the first sign of movement in my direction, I would view that as a threat and defend myself.
Yeah, absolutely. In this video, there is a series of a few law enforcement officers standing around. And they're making their best attempt to talk him down. This is Chris's favorite thing. He likes it when the cops show restraint, which I like when they show restraint as well. So in my opinion, the first 10 or 15 seconds with this guy was far more than enough talking. At that point, he has put your life in jeopardy. Would you agree? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I like restraint, but then there's stupidity. And this guy was clearly, he wasn't afraid. There were several officers there, I think 5 or 6. He was stepping towards them, charging towards them. He wasn't showing any restraint towards the officers. I would like to see some sort of mutual restraint as well. And I definitely, in that situation, it was scary to watch these officers allow him to charge towards them, not have their firearms ready, and ends up several of them were stabbed and injured.
Yeah, and some of the law enforcement officers are holding rifles in their support side hand, bending down and picking up keys only 10, 15 feet away from this individual with a knife. And ultimately, that is one of the officers that gets stabbed or slashed, I guess, in the video. And this guy does tremendous amounts of damage to multiple law enforcement officers inside 15 to 20 seconds before they finally draw their firearms and they end this person's life, or at least shoot him to the point or injure him to the point point where he can no longer continue the attack. But why these cops are not more well-trained than this and why they haven't made the decision to choose life over somebody else taking their life is absolutely beyond me. I would love to see these guys get more training, at least 5 or 6 more days in the range, and probably they need to consider a different career path.
Yeah, and I guess, I don't know, they were all like that. I think it was departmental. I don't think they probably get a lot of training is what I saw. It seemed like these people were probably hired as police officer, fired their gun a few times, and were sent out on patrol.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it also shows how dangerous one guy with a gun or one guy with a knife can be. You know, we all think, oh, the guy's got a pocket knife on, he couldn't pose that large of a threat, or I'm really afraid of guns. But one guy with a knife was able to severely injure multiple law enforcement officers who already had their firearms out and at the ready.
They were literally falling down trying to get away from him with a knife, and he was stabbing them. And yeah, it was chaos.
Yeah, and dog psychology, right? You come at me and I stand my ground or I even charge towards you, that's going to give you a moment of pause. You're not going to want to continue to run into me. Now, on the other hand, if you charge me and I start backing away as I draw my firearm, what does that tell you as my adversary? You should keep coming. I mean, obviously this person's weak and you should attack me. And that's exactly what these officers did. They gave him not only the advantage of not having their guns pointed at him, but they also gave him the advantage of the psychological advantage that they were afraid. And once he realized that they were afraid, he knew that he could do anything he wanted to these cops. And if they responded at all, it would be very late.
Absolutely. And that takes us to our next video where fear played a role in that one heavily as well.
Absolutely. So we're going to have to take a quick break. We'll come back to our next video here in just a couple of minutes. You're listening to Michael Loy with Chris Taylor on the Heads Up Radio Network.
Date today. My kids are sick again, and I have a terrible headache, and medicine just doesn't seem to help.
Seems like you guys are always sick. Have you had your house tested for mold?
Come on, Jen, you know me. I keep my house spotless. There's no mold here.
That's what I thought about our house. We had the same problems last year and called mountain mold testing. They came right out and inspected our whole house for mold.
Really? What happened?
Well, mountain mold testing took air samples, and the lab test showed that we were breathing dangerous, invisible mold. We got the mold cleaned up, and now we don't have any more wheezing, headaches, or congestion. They gave us our health back.
Mold can cause numerous health problems, including allergies, chronic headaches, asthma, and lung infections. Children, pregnant women, and the elderly are especially susceptible. Call Mountain Mold Testing at 208-660-8877. That's 208-660-8877. Online at mountainmoldtesting.com.
In this world of moving commerce, your business is either moving forward or moving backwards. Make sure it moves forward. Maybe it's time we build a spot that fits your image. Blue Creative Group takes the time needed to put together a spot you want people to hear and make it a marketing tool to drive customers to your business. With the tools and experience ad agencies and radio stations lack, Blue Creative Group will score it, voice it, and produce it. And if need be, place it on radio and TV stations throughout the Northwest. Blue Creative Group lets you make your branding personal to your target audience. Be creative, be productive, while being cost-effective. Be Blue. Blue Creative Group. Creative marketing plans for the 21st century. Call today, 208-758-0546. 208-758-0546. Informative. Provocative. Gun talkative. The Gun Guru, Michael Loy, exclusively on the Heads Up Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Michael Loy Show with Chris Taylor. We certainly saved the best and worst video to discuss for last. Chris, I think that this video really hits home for you. I think that you have a lot to say about it. So if you want to go ahead and open it up, give us a description of what we've been watching.
Well, this one involves a traffic stop with a law enforcement officer. He pulls over a veteran, military veteran, who is immediately not happy about being stopped. They're out in the country somewhere. Apparently, help was not near for the officer, and immediately the person stopped, exited his truck, and charged towards the officer. Was yelling, screaming, flailing his arms. The officer was attempting to defuse the situations, kind of calling commands, keeping his distance, and it just the other person just escalated up until he finally retrieved a firearm from his truck, and it was a gunfight ensued.
Okay, so I guess just to back up a touch here, when he first has contact with the individual that he's making the traffic stop on, the veteran, how would you say that particular law enforcement officer's demeanor was on his first point of contact?
At first, it was, I would say, kind of traditional law enforcement. It was executing orders with a firm tone. I don't think it was overbearing or rude or anything of that nature, but it was a firm tone, telling him, do not exit your vehicle, which he continued to do. And then what I always talk, you'll hear this theme repeatedly from me, is the psychology of a gunfight, how people perform and their fears take over. And it's clear that the officer becomes alarmed that this guy is charging towards him when he's armed and the person he stopped is not armed. And he's continuing to come at him and say, shoot me, and insult him and tell him to get out of here, and just show no fear for this officer whatsoever. Charges towards him several times, turns, flailing his arms. So
I would say the word that comes to mind, I agree with everything you just said. The word that comes to mind for me when that officer first makes a verbal contact with the person that he's pulling over is he's very confident. He, like you said, he sounds like a traditional law enforcement officer making his first point of contact with any new individual or private citizen in the United States. Confident, not rude, not exactly polite, but very direct and to the point. You can immediately identify within seconds of the video that the person that he stopped is not mentally stable. On my back porch this week, we were discussing this video with a couple of friends, and one of them had mentioned that the guy clearly was crazy right out of the gate. He gets out of his truck, he's bouncing around, singing, shoot me, shoot me, shoot me. As a law enforcement officer, should that cause alarm, or should you continue to show restraint? And I made the comment that there's probably been hundreds of times in the average law enforcement officer's career where people have danced around, jumped around in front of him, beat me up, shoot me, tase me, take me to jail, talked endless amounts of garbage that nothing ever happened. So I believe that this law enforcement officer is somewhat conditioned not to respond using lethal force given that scenario. They've seen it 100 times before, and it's always been okay. At this point, the officer does not have a reason to think that this guy's going to do what he does.
Sometimes that's a cry for help. A lot of people think they want to do suicide by cop, but when the time comes, they don't really mean it. So the officer was showing proper restraint early, and he did immediately call for backup pretty early in that situation. In fact, that escalated the guy more because he's screaming at him, who you calling, who you calling? But clearly at some point the officer becomes fearful. You start to hear in his voice fear as he's trying to gain control of the situation and make commands towards the guy to step away or, get back in his vehicle and stuff like that. And clearly you can hear the fear in his voice begin to appear.
Absolutely. And you just made the comment when he's making commands, and I think early on, 4 or 5 seconds into this confrontation, the officer is clearly making confident, concise demands. Within 10 or 15 seconds, it's no longer a demand. Even the tone of his voice, his posture, his body language, everything about it is now asking this individual to put down his gun. And that is not something you should be doing. In very few situations should you even order somebody to put a gun down in the civilian world. If someone has a gun and they've made their intentions clear, start shooting, stop talking.
And in this case, the individual does go back to his truck. The officer at first begins to follow him to the vehicle. And I've seen videos like this before where police do not allow the person to go back to the vehicle. They know that it's a high likelihood they're going to retrieve a firearm. So they follow them. They try to make sure and see what they're doing, have their firearm ready, and prepare themselves for a gunfight, because it's a highly likelihood that's what they're facing. In this case, the officer does take several steps to follow him and then makes a decision that ends up costing him his life. He turns and takes cover behind his own vehicle instead. and I guess he's hoping help arrives. And unfortunately, the man retrieves a rifle, semi-automatic rifle, and now it's a handgun versus rifle battle.
Yeah, exactly. And I just watched that clip in the video. The officer's actually yelling at the driver of the vehicle to put down the gun. Multiple times he issues the same command. And the individual, the suspect in this given scenario, is fumbling around with the rifle. I don't know whether he's trying to load it or it's snagged on a seatbelt or a gun case, but for a few seconds trying to get it out. And at this point, the officer's now asking him to put down the rifle. Start shooting, stop talking.
Yeah, no doubt. He waits to be fired upon first, and at that point, they're at some sort of a distance, and a rifle round is going to go through a car much more effectively. The suspect had no fear. I think he'd already made the decision that his life was going to end that day, but he was going to try to take out the officer with him. And in this case, that psychological advantage, the advantage of the rifle, all those aspects meant that the suspect left the scene and the officer did not.
Yeah, and you can tell that the officer's mindset is not where it should be from 15 seconds into the video, roughly. He's scared. He's now asking, and the worst thing that could ever happen to any law enforcement officer does happen to this individual. At the end of the video, or near the end of the video, shortly before he expires, he is asking the guy to stop shooting at him and I believe at this point the officer's down on the ground, and he's armed, and he's asking the attacker to stop shooting or stop what he's doing. At that point, it's just far too late. Unfortunately, this is where there was not enough training, enough mental conditioning for this gentleman to be out there carrying a firearm. And what I don't ever want to see happen to any of my students or anybody else out there carrying concealed is for you or me to find ourselves in this situation where we haven't mentally prepared before we put this gun on.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not a law enforcement officer. I won't face the same exact scenario, but still, I could be in a scenario where I'm trying to guess: should I fire? Should I not fire? Like, when do you fire? And that's sometimes restraint can be deadly for you. Absolutely.
Exactly. It's one of the things that we discuss in my courses, my handgun training classes. Go home after this class tonight while everything's still fresh in your mind, and discuss with your spouse, your brother, your sister, your mother, tonight, tomorrow, over the next few months, hopefully every week for the rest of your life, what you're willing to die for, and that will ultimately answer what you're willing to kill for. And in most situations, that will give you the legal justification to kill for it. You're willing to die for your daughter? Absolutely. Well, then by all means, take someone else's life to protect hers. Are you willing to die for your motorcycle in the car? Absolutely not. If truly faced with that decision, no one would say, yes, take my life for the motorcycle. Well, clearly the law is not going to allow you to take somebody else's life to protect that motorcycle. Make these decisions now, make them early, and remember that they're evolving decisions. It's not just, well, today this is how I would handle this situation. A year from now, you most likely will feel differently. If you're doing your job in regards to making these hard decisions, your decision will change a year from now.
Absolutely.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Michael Loy with Chris Taylor on the Heads Up Radio Network.
Coffee date today. My kids are sick again, and I have a terrible headache, and medicine just doesn't seem to help.
Seems like you guys are always sick. Have you had your house tested for mold?
Come on, Jen, you know me. I keep my house spotless. There's no mold here.
That's what I thought about our house. We had the same problems last year and called mountain mold testing. They came right out and inspected our whole house for mold.
Really? What happened?
Well, mountain mold testing took air samples, and the lab test showed that we were breathing dangerous, invisible mold. We got the mold cleaned up, and now we don't have any more wheezing, headaches, or congestion. They gave us our health back.
Mold can cause numerous health problems, including allergies, chronic headaches, asthma, and lung infections. Children, pregnant women, and the elderly are especially susceptible. Call Mountain Mold Testing at 208-660-8877. That's 208-660-8877. Online at mountainmoldtesting.com.
Avalanche Cleaning and Restoration is ready for spring. Are you? Let Avalanche get you ready for summer by making your house or business springtime clean. For all your carpet upholstery and window cleaning needs, even those emergency cleanups, call Avalanche. 208-762-2227. Emergency hotline 208-818-4411 or online avalancheclean.com. Avalanche, fast, safe, and reliable. Looking for something different to do tonight? Thinking of a restaurant that you haven't been to for a while or a place to take the kids out for a fun night? Ever find yourself in this situation? This is a question that prompted publisher Jeanette Dunn to create Idaho Cuisine and Spokane Sizzle dining and entertainment guides. And it just keeps getting better with their pocket guides, online editions, and now online local restaurant finder at sizzlingcuisine.com. Also find local wineries, breweries, distilleries, great recipes from local chefs, hot spots and cool happenings, and chances to vote for your favorites. Be in the know about local happenings when you sign up for the Sizzlin' Cuisine e-News, delivered to your desktop weekly, and be eligible to win a free dinner for two. You've always enjoyed reading the magazines. Now it's easy to flip through them online too. Makes it easy to find restaurants that offer great menus prepared by experienced staffs who really care to serve you the best in local cuisine. Spokane Sizzle and Idaho Cuisine are online at sizzleincuisine.com. We do the footwork to make it easy for you to find just what you're looking for. Support of Heads Up Radio's audio stream comes from people like you. Join the thousands that make independent radio stations like Heads Up Radio available to the public and your community. Please donate today. Informative. Provocative. Gun talkative. The gun guru, Michael Loy, exclusively on the Heads Up Radio Network.
Welcome back to the Michael Loy Show on the Heads Up Radio Network. You're listening to Michael Loy with Chris Taylor, the two most gun talkative guys on earth. We do it once a week here on Wednesday nights with you and pretty much every day in between. So we're absolutely gun talkative.
Absolutely. Most of our subjects from the show occur from conversations we have during the week, so yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so while we were on the break, I went out to get a cup of coffee, and Chris started talking to me about the very first video that we discussed, and that's the individual in a business and in a store, and of course attackers come rushing into the store, they start shooting, he draws his gun. I like the video because to me it proves a point that if you don't have the confidence to carry your firearm with a loaded chamber, you don't have the confidence you really shouldn't be carrying a firearm at all. It could end your life, or it could save your life, that decision of whether or not to carry a loaded chamber. Chris brought up a couple other good points about this video, which is bringing us back to it, and I think these points are very noteworthy.
What struck me about it is the victim in this, the jewelry store probably owner, what it appears to be, who ultimately is unable to return fire. He still is physically fighting strong. He's shot multiple times by both perpetrators. He's still continuing to fight, and they actually come and try to rip the gun out of his hand. He swings in him. He's still got a lot of fight in him. You can't even recognize at that point if he's been shot. You just see bullets going in his direction. They leave. It's 10, 15, 20 seconds that he's fighting, able to fight, yet he's mortally wounded. When they leave, it's like within 5 seconds you see him deteriorate and die that quickly. But prior to that, shot that many times, he was still fighting. And what concerns me about that is viewing him as an adversary. Let's say he was the bad guy, and I was defending myself against him and putting this many rounds into him, and his weapon was functioning. The fact that these rounds were not stopping him, they did kill him, but they weren't stopping him from fighting.
Absolutely, which brings us back to can you die in a gunfight and still win? If this guy would have had a functional gun, he absolutely could have died in this gunfight and still won. I'm going to assume that there are other people. I know that there are other people behind the counters. Let's say it's a small jewelry store. That may have been his kids. It may have been his wife. It could have been close friends. That he'd already made the decision that he'd be willing to kill to protect those people. And if he in this scenario where he didn't have a functioning firearm, what if those attackers decided to turn and execute his entire family? So he could have, if he would have had a functioning gun in this battle, he could have died in the battle and still made sure, like Chris said, 10, 15 seconds. He fought very, very hard after being mortally wounded. He still could have ended those attackers' lives and preserved the lives of other innocent people.
And then I also look at it as, what if he was my adversary? How do I stop him from fighting sooner? And really that comes down to training, shot placement, the type of rounds you carry, because my goal really isn't to kill the other guy. It's to stop him from hurting me, to stop him from doing harm to me or those around me. I want my shots to stop him sooner than the amount of rounds and ultimately fatal gunshots he received failed to stop him from fighting for so long.
Absolutely. My goal in a gunfight is to end the person's life in front of me, and I'll do whatever that takes. As long as they continue to pose a threat to me, I'm going to continue to try to end that person's life. That's a decision that I made, and it's an evolving decision, so maybe 5 years from now we might be saying something. You might hear me say something different, but today, my objective when I draw my firearm for personal protection is to kill the person in front of me. As long as they can still offer me harm in any way, I want to continue to try to take that person's life because I assume that they're going to try to take my life. Chris, you brought up a good point months ago. We were standing in the parking lot talking about when's the right time to start fighting if somebody tries to kidnap you. So, for instance, what would you tell your daughter? How would you tell your daughter to respond if a guy comes over and says, hey, can you come get in my car with me? And then you refuse and he reaches out and grabs you by the arm. When should she respond?
Immediately. Your best chance is immediately. People tend to think, well, I'll wait for the right moment. I'll wait for a time of weakness. They are the most afraid, the most vulnerable right in the beginning. If you scream, they're afraid of the other people around, witnesses helping. That's when the attacker is the most vulnerable, the most fearful. Often when people fight hard, they just run away. But once you allow yourself to be taken away, you allow them to control the situation, everything changes. And people make the false decision that they'll find an opportunity later.
Yeah, I agree. So, and that I'm going to segue that into making sure that your gun's ready to go 100% of the time. The first moment that you feel like your life's in danger, respond as if you're going to die. When someone walks up to you and holds you at knife point and says, give me your wallet, assume that they're going to thrust that knife into your throat or face moments after they said that. So assume that at that point that your life is in danger. Immediately respond. That's the time that, like Chris said, they're going to be the most nervous, right? They're committing a violent crime. Even if they don't care whether you live or die, they're still afraid to go to jail. They don't want to deal with the cops. They don't want to lose their freedom, even if it's to a small extent. So they have a lot to lose right there in the beginning of the fight. Well, make sure you take the rest of what they have to lose. If they threaten your life, take their life. And that's the moment that you need to respond. Don't wait until, well, maybe he'll let me go. Well, maybe he won't actually stab me. Maybe he won't actually pull the trigger. Forget about that. The minute that someone has the opportunity and you believe that they will do some type of harm to you, end that person's life. Don't give them that opportunity.
I'd rather have my daughter die on her terms, die trying to get away right in the beginning, than to have them take her away and, do it in their way. At least I would have the knowledge that she died by her choice. She died fighting for her life.
Yeah, and that makes good sense. Something maybe you haven't considered before. We have a lot of technology out there in the world today, and rather than teaching your daughter to be a violent person, like fighting other individuals, have you considered getting her a cell phone and showing her how to dial 911?
Oh, yes, I have. And the police are always waiting within seconds response time.
Yeah.
There's no way that anything bad could happen while she's waiting for 911.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
Right.
So one more reason, maybe we should let everybody carry a firearm if they can show some competency with it. And maybe we don't need the government to determine that competency. Maybe we need parents and other responsible members of society to determine at what age and what ability a person should be or is allowed to legally possess a firearm. I am asked every week for that matter. I have parents call me and they say, well, what's the age requirement to get into your firearms training course? Or what's the age requirement to get into a concealed weapons permit class? Well, clearly, in order to apply for a concealed weapons permit here in Idaho, you have to be 21 years of age, and that's all 50 states in the U.S. But what is the age? What should the age be for a person to be able to take a concealed weapons permit class? Or how about a handgun course, a live fire course, where you're coming out and you're practicing for the purpose of personal protection, learning the tools, tactics, and techniques of self-defense, taking another person's life to preserve a life. Self-defense tactics with a handgun. How old should a person have to be in order to do those two things?
Well, we've decided in this country 18 is young enough to serve in the military, and they're given weapons, and so at a minimum 18, but I might even go younger than that in some cases. I don't know. I guess people want to limit what other people can do because they think that there's bad things that can happen. But, there's a lot of things we do and bad things happen. We allow people to drive cars and they kill people every day.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Okay, guys, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. You're listening to Michael Loy with Chris Taylor on the Heads Up Radio Network.
To our coffee date today. My kids are sick again, and I have a terrible headache, and medicine just doesn't seem to help.
Seems like you guys are always sick. Have you had your house tested for mold?
Come on, Jen, you know me. I keep my house spotless. There's no mold here.
That's what I thought about our house. We had the same problems last year and called mountain mold testing. They came right out and inspected our whole house for mold.
Really? What happened?
Well, mountain mold testing took air samples, and the lab test showed that we were breathing dangerous, invisible mold. We got the mold cleaned up, and now we don't have any more wheezing, headaches, or congestion. They gave us our health back.
Mold can cause numerous health problems, including allergies, chronic headaches, asthma, and lung infections. Children, pregnant women, and the elderly are especially susceptible. Call Mountain Mold Testing at 208-660-8877. That's 208-660-8877. Online at mountainmoldtesting.com.
Looking for something different to do tonight? Thinking of a restaurant that you haven't been to for a while, or a place to take the kids out for a fun night? Ever find yourself in this situation? This is a question that prompted publisher Jeanette Dunn to create Idaho Cuisine and Spokane Sizzle dining and entertainment guides. And it just keeps getting better with their pocket guides, online editions, and now online local restaurant finder at sizzleandcuisine.com. Also find local wineries, breweries, distilleries, great recipes from local chefs, hot spots and cool happenings, and chances to vote for your favorites. Be in the know about local happenings when you sign up for the Sizzlin' Cuisine e-News, delivered to your desktop weekly, and be eligible to win a free dinner for two. You've always enjoyed reading the magazines. Now it's easy to flip through them online too. Makes it easy to find restaurants that offer great menus prepared by experienced staff who really care to serve you the best in local cuisine. Spokane Sizzle and Idaho Cuisine are online at sizzleincuisine.com. We do the footwork to make it easy for you to find just what you're looking for.
In this world of moving commerce, your business is either moving forward or moving backwards. Make sure it moves forward. Maybe it's time we build a spot that fits your image. Blue Creative Group takes the time needed to put together a spot you want people to hear, and make it a marketing tool to drive customers to your business. With the tools and experience ad agencies and radio stations lack, Blue Creative Group will score it, voice it, and produce it, and if need be, place it on radio and TV stations throughout the Northwest. Blue Creative Group lets you make your branding personal to your target audience. Be creative, be productive, while being cost-effective. Be Blue. Blue Creative Group. Creative marketing plans for the 21st century. Call today, 208-758-0546. 208-758-0546. In this world of moving commerce, your business is either moving forward
Avalanche
or moving
Cleaning and
backwards.
Restoration is ready for spring. Are you? Let Avalanche get you ready for summer by making your home or business springtime clean. For your carpet, upholstery, general home cleaning, window cleaning needs, even emergency cleanups, call 208-762-2227. If you've got an emergency, 208-818-4411, or go online at avalancheclean.com. Avalanche, clean, safe, and reliable. Informative, provocative, gun talkative. The Gun Guru, Michael Loy, exclusively on the Heads Up Radio Network.
Okay, we're back. You're listening to Michael Loy and Chris Taylor on the Heads Up Radio Network. We were talking about something that I'm pretty darn passionate about. How old should a person be, or how old does a person need to be in order to be able to defend their own life? I just gave Chris the advice that, Chris, how old is your daughter?
10.
I just gave Chris the advice that he should not be teaching his 10-year-old daughter to fight with someone that tries to get her in the car to kidnap her. He needs to teach her how to dial 911 and pay for her cell phone. I think it's lunacy. What about the 16-year-old kid? Should he or she be able to go out and attend firearms training courses with the sole intent of knowing how to use a firearm for lethal purposes to kill someone that offers violence to them? Is 16 the right age? Is 21 the right age? And Chris mentioned we can join the military and we can fight and defend our country at the ripe age of 18, which if you ask most parents under 35 today, they would tell you that that 18, they're still kids. They still have a lot of growing up to do. But they can go out and fight and defend our country, but they can't come home and defend their own family in a vehicle as they drive to and from any place in the United States.
Absolutely. Yeah, they can fire guns from tanks, fire weapons I don't have access to at 18, yet they're not trusted to walk around society and be able to defend themselves. I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
Absolutely. So the 18-year-old man or woman that serves in the military comes back at the age of 20, and this is an exact scenario. I had a kid come in who wanted to purchase a firearm. It was a transfer from his parents, and he was under the impression that if I received the firearm, I could transfer that firearm to him before his 20th birthday. He had already been overseas, served one tour in Iraq or Afghanistan, and I don't recall which one. Now I'm holding on to a firearm that his parents sent him, and as a licensed dealer, I cannot transfer this firearm to this 20-year-old man, veteran of the United States military. And I had to stand there and tell him, I'm sorry, the FBI won't allow, our government, the one that you just fought so desperately hard to defend, will not allow you to have the same defensive tools here in your own country as you could overseas when you were protecting the government. So in this scenario, he had to wait until he was 21 to come back in and transfer the firearm into his name. So not only did he, but his wife and his kids went unprotected in the United States because of a system that's set up the way that it is.
Right. Well, you guys obviously missed the part in the Constitution that says your right to bear arms shall not be infringed after you're 21.
Oh,
you missed that part.
Clearly I did. We should need to talk to Penn and Teller about that and get them to read that portion to us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, unbelievable. I always tell my students, or potential students, anybody that calls me and asks what the age requirement is to get into one of my classes, I say, listen, you're the parent. You're better at making this judgment call than I could ever be. Do you feel that your son or daughter is mature enough and capable of handling the adult content in a concealed weapons permit class? Are they capable of watching some violent videos? Do they have an understanding of death? I volunteer and teach hunter's education as well. And oftentimes parents say to me, well, the state says my child has to be 8 years old to get in or 10 years old to get in. Can I let them in at 6? And I say, absolutely. You want to let them in at 5 as long as they can sit in the chair. If they only take 5% out of that class at age 5, that's 5% more than they knew. You might as well get them in the classroom, start spreading the information and the joys of hunting and harvesting animals. And then if you feel as their parent that it would be responsible and diligent on your part to send them back again at age 10, again at age 14, I know a lot of 50-year-old men that probably need to take hunter's ed a few times. Continue to send them back and give them the tools and the education that they need to be responsible hunters. Give everyone. I have a great kid. He takes my defensive handgun courses here in Coeur d'Alene, and he's been taking them for 3 or 4 years now. I would love to be in a gunfight and have him standing next to me. The kid's fast, he's confident, he's secure with the firearm. At the ripe age of 12 years old, and he's been training drawing a semi-automatic handgun from a strong side hip holster and firing that gun with a huge degree of confidence and ability. So he is the exception at his age. Not very many kids have the responsibility or the understanding at that age to be able to use a firearm for practice, but this kid does. So his father said, listen, you'll understand when you meet my son. And I said, well, let's bring him out, but be aware he may not be able to complete the entire course. And the father was willing to take that risk, and the son came out and performed amazingly well on his first time.
Yeah, absolutely. People like that have the maturity and the intelligence and the respect of the firearms as well often do better than people much older than them.
Do you really think that parents have the ability to make that type of a judgment call?
I think so. Parents can take their children shooting. They don't have to they can't legally own or possess a firearm, but they can absolutely do them, and that's at the direction of their parents. They are the owners of the firearm, and it happens all the time. Yeah.
I mean, I'm aware that it happens. I'm just wondering if parents have I guess if parents are qualified to make that decision, maybe something to consider is that parents shouldn't be qualified to make that decision. We should run those choices through some type of a governmental agency like we do now, right? I mean, clearly that works right. That works great.
Yeah, that's great. More government is what we need.
I thought you'd like that one.
Yeah. And there's cases where young children have defended themselves. There's one recently where the young, I think 12-year-old female was a competitive shotgun competing, and some people broke in her house, and she grabbed her shotgun and shot them and defended her and her younger brother.
Yeah, which was absolutely awesome. And federal law would have told the parent in that situation that they had to have that firearm out of reach of that child. But clearly the mother knew that the child was responsible, and I'm going to say adolescent or young adult, was responsible enough to know the ramifications of using that firearm. And look, it saved her life.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, we're out of here for the night. Have a great night. Thanks for listening to Michael Loy and Chris Taylor on the Heads Up Radio Network. See you next week.